Right, so welcome everybody to the final session today, which is going to be very, very interesting. I gather we've had a very good conference so far, very spirited. Just want to start off by just one bit of house rules. We are a party which is still one party. We've got all our divisions within our party that we're all very aware of. And I just want to say a big thank you to Diane Abbott for coming today. Yeah, thank you. And on my way here, I tweeted a picture of the thing, and somebody was like, "Oh, I can't believe Diane's coming to Progress, and she's going to have an awful time." And I was like, in that voice, obviously, in that voice. And then I was like, actually, Diane came last year and got a very good reception. People didn't agree with everything she said, but she got a respectful reception. And I think that's what we've got to all strive towards in the Labour Party. Whatever wing of the Labour Party we're on, we're still one party. And if we want to win and make progress, we've got to stay one party. And we've got to try and be a bit more respectful to each other. So no heckling. Thanks. Right. We are not going to do opening statements because I figure you've all got like tons of questions, so I'm just going to crack on, do very, very quick introductions. Beside me you have Mary Creagh, MP for Wakefield, has many important roles and has a very, very important role right now as chair of the Environmental Audit Select Committee, which is hugely important. We have Diane Abbott, Shadow Home Secretary, who is a hugely important person in the Corbyn leadership team right now. As we all know, we have Georgia Gould, who is leader of Camden Council. She's been the leader since May 2017, and obviously Camden had some fantastic results in the local elections. And we have Liz Kendall, who we all know and love. Liz, who has followed in Diane's footsteps onto the This Week sofa. That is the best gig in town, I tell you. That is the dream team. And then finally, we have the wonderful Angela Eagle. Who's held many positions in the Labour Party and has just published a fantastic book with Imran. Where's Imran? Where are you? He's still manning the thing. They've just published a book, which I can't remember the name of, sorry. What's the book called, Angela?
It's called The New Serfdom, The Triumph of Conservative Ideas and How to Defeat Them.
Snappy title and very important. Right, okay, let's crack on with questions. We've got about an hour and we want to get through as many as possible. Okay, hands in the air. Right, I'm going to take that lady at the back with the sort of, yep, you're the... Say who you are, please, and not your whole life story, but just it's
not on.
Oh.
Hello? Yeah. Hello, my name's Ali Routledge. I'm from Saffron Walden CLP. I went to Barnet on Thursday to door knock, and I knocked on a man's door, and he said that he was Jewish, and he had been a member of the Labour Party for 60 years, and that afternoon was the first time he ever voted Tory. Now, I don't just feel depressed and upset about this anymore. I'm absolutely ashamed this is what our party's come to. And you know, I just want to say a big shout out to the Jewish Labour movement, because they are fantastic in what they're doing. They campaigned so hard in Barnet, and it was a really hard thing. It is shameful for our party. We are not an anti-racist party if we tolerate anti-Semitism, end of. So I would actually just a yes or no from every single member of the panel. Is anti-Semitism a smear against the leadership of Jeremy Corbyn, or is it an actual issue that we need to address in the party? Please, yes or no. We really need to tackle this head on. Thanks.
Okay, thanks very much for that question. And we might take them in groups of three. I just want to make one point on that, and I think the anti-Semitism point is hugely well made. I think we, as progressives on the left, have got to hold ourselves to a higher standard on racism, anti-Semitism. And Labour, as we know, I'm afraid correctly lost that council because of racism and anti-Semitism. But I want to draw attention to something else. The Conservative campaign won a council in Pendle because of disgusting racism. And they reinstated a councillor who made a joke about brown people being like dogs, the kind of joke that would shame the BNP. And I hope that the media, I shall certainly be raising this as well, the media work I do, you can't just pick and choose where you call out racism. That applies to the sort of press as well. You know what I mean? So, but very good questions. Okay, we're just going to whisk through that question and we'll come back. Okay, yes or no on the question about how we sort of tackle anti-Semitism and whether we think anti-Semitism is a smear against the leadership and what we're doing to pursue.
No, it's not, and I'm devastated that our party is even discussing this in the 21st century.
Yes, it is a real issue. Oh, sorry.
Is it a smear against the leadership?
No, it's not a smear against the leadership. It is a real issue.
No, it's not a smear against the leadership.
No, it's not, and Jeremy himself has said that it's people who raise this issue, it's not a smear against him, and I think we have to understand the particular type of anti-Semitism on the left where rightful anger and concern about the policies of the current government of Israel tips over into a rejection of the state of Israel and failing to understand why its creation was so important, and where anger about capitalism and its inequalities ends up being these age-old anti-Semitic tropes about Jewish bankers ruling the world. So we have to understand the particular nature of it if we're going to tackle it and eradicate it.
It's not a smear. It needs to be confronted head on, and there need to be consequences for anyone who's in our party who's besmirching our values and our party name by sinking to that level.
Thank you. And by the way, I don't really need people shouting out, answer the question. I don't need some wee guy mansplaining to me how to do my job as chair, all right? So thanks very much. Yeah, okay. Thanks all, thanks ever so. Right, I just want to ask one other question to Diane, which is, what should the leadership, what should Head HQ be doing now to kind of expedite this and get a grip on the cases and also the Ken Livingstone question? Can we not ban him from going on television as well? I mean, please.
We could try and ban him talking about Hitler, but I don't think he'd listen. No, there's about 70 or 80 particularly bad outstanding cases, which we hope to expedite before July. We've got a new in-house lawyer, we've got a team of barristers. We also need to look at what you might call education. We're thinking of trying to do some work with the Jewish Leadership Council because there are people who feel passionately about Palestine, but maybe slide over into, a very wrong narrative. And we're looking at maybe there's education we could do. And Jeremy himself has spoken out very strongly about this, not least in an article he did for The Standard, I think, last week. So it's setting a lead, which we try to do. It's dealing with the outstanding, particularly serious cases. We have dealt with Mark Wadsworth, and I believe the intention is to deal with Ken before July. And it's also looking
Which year? Sorry.
Before July this year. And it's also this issue about education, getting people to understand how it's possible to stand up strongly for Palestine, but not slide over into anti-Semitic tropes.
Okay, George, I think you wanted to come in on this.
I think that we need to have the leadership on this from the top, as you say, but I think we also all have a responsibility to take this on, and I'm proudly Jewish, and I led last week a really diverse group of candidates, and we won a majority in Camden, saying very firmly that we would be vocal on anti-Semitism and we'd speak up about it. And last year we passed the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism unanimously, and we are working with the Jewish community in Camden to Education, yeah, I think if you say to people, come to an education session, but to talk about the connection of the Jewish faith and social justice, we've always been the Jewish community has always been real champions for social justice. I think that it's not enough just to have it at a local level. I know knocking on doors in Camden, people said, we do not feel that your party as a whole is taking it on strong enough, and I think that's what happened in Barnet, but I think that we all have to kind of step up and take this on.
Yep. Right. Okay. Actually, I feel I should bring Alan. Yes. I feel like you should come in at this point. Yeah.
Thank you very much. This may be a little bit longer, so I hope you'll forgive me.
Sure, just be wary of time.
I am wary of
right.
time.
Yeah.
2 days ago, I lost my seat on Barnet Council. Adam Langermair was councillor for West Hendon. Myself and Councillor Agnes Slocum and a great candidate called Callum Callick all lost. This is also my first ever Progress event, so thank you for having me.
Can't believe Diane's more of a progressor than you are. This is a first.
It's kind of directed at Diane, but I'd like to hear what everyone has to say. As you know, the Jewish community is extremely diverse politically. Jews vote Labour, Jews vote Conservative, and there are lots and lots of undecided Jewish voters. Many are absolutely committed to the same values that we are. But in this election, many couldn't. 4 nights ago, I was knocking on a door with Arjun here in High Barnet, and a woman opened the door and she saw my red rosette and just burst into tears. She then pointed to the mezuzah on her house, on her door, and said, "Turkeys don't vote for Christmas." And then she told me her life story about her involvement in the trade union movement, the Labour movement. She's never voted anything other than Labour, but she would not vote for us on Thursday. And that was in High Barnet. We lost High Barnet by 1 vote. Okay? High Barnet also has a Jewish population of 6%. In Hale, we lost on average by 500 votes. That has a Jewish population of 19%. In West Hendon, where I was a councillor, we lost by, on average, 100 votes, 14%. East Barnet, 30 votes, 5% Jewish population. Brunswick Park, 100 votes and a 5% population. Across the west of Haringey, where there's also large Jewish communities, we also lost badly. Now, over the past 48 hours, I've been talking about my experiences of anti-Semitism in the Labour Party in the media, and I now have a huge amount of sympathy. In fact, I always have had a huge amount of sympathy and admiration for you, Diane, because the abuse that you have taken over the years is outrageous. But over the last 48 hours, the sheer abuse I've received for speaking out on Labour Party anti-Semitism from people who claim to support the Labour Party is an equal outrage, just because I'm Jewish. There are not just 70 cases. There have been 3,000 cases submitted on top of the 70, which are awaiting review. I want to hear, with passion, what are you going to do about it? This is clearly something the Jewish community do not have faith in us. They do not have faith in the leader of the Labour Party right now in dealing with this. And I would say, commenting on the previous answer, everything that's been written has been brilliant. The article in the Evening Standard was brilliant. The 4th letter to the Jewish community was brilliant. But we don't hear the passion. We don't hear, like, he cares about it. He needs to, like, we need to hear people say, we understand this is a virus that has infected our party, and we are going to tackle it head on with passion. So I think I've made my point. I want to hear what does everyone think needs to be done right now, seriously needs to be done right now as a matter of urgency to regain the faith of the Jewish community and to regain the soul of the Labour Party.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Again, Diane, I feel we must come to you first on this.
You know, I represent one of the oldest Jewish communities in the country, in Hackney. And I still have a very large Haredi community. And they've actually suffered from attacks and abuse on the street because they're very visible on the street. So, and also, to be honest, I fought against racism and anti-Semitism all my life. But I understand that what the leadership has done up to now has not been seen to be enough. So all I can tell you is that I will take back the strength of feeling from this conference. I know you said it's not just 70, but we're talking about the 70 worst cases, including Ken Livingstone, which we want to get cleared up by the summer. I'll take back the strength of feeling from this conference because everyone in the current Labour leadership is upset that the Jewish community is so upset. It's not just a question of which ward you win and which ward you lose. That's, in a sense, a second-order question. The primary order question is how we're relating to a community who, at this point, feels in pain and beleaguered. And so all I can do is take back to Jeremy what you're saying today, because we have to do more.
And Diane, how deeply do you think, I mean, you're very good friends with Jeremy, how deeply do you think this has affected him? How sorry do you think he genuinely is?
Do you know, I imagine a lot of you won't believe me. He's very upset by this. He's very upset by this. And
Have you had private conversations with him about it?
Yes, he's very upset. Well, I can't tell you. He wants to make it good. And it's only one of the reasons I'm here is to hear from people, to hear what people want us to do now, on top of and you're right, you can't ask people to go to...
Hang on,
Sorry,
please.
sorry.
It's not that hard to just zip, okay?
Georgia's
Thanks.
right. You can't invite people to a class, but you can have discussions with people so there's a better narrative around the pro-Palestinian narrative. And we have to clear up the outstanding cases, because until people get suspended or get thrown out, they're not going to take what they've done seriously. So it's three things. It's discussion, it's dealing with the outstanding cases, and it's leadership from the top. And Jeremy has tried to give that leadership and will continue to do so.
Okay, Mary, Angela, I'll come to you. Mary, what's your...
Well, I chaired for about 4 years the all-party parliamentary group on genocide prevention in Parliament. So this is a subject that's very close to my heart, and I've made a point of maintaining relationships with the US Holocaust Museum. And my work in sort of 2005 to 2010 was about remembering more recent genocides. Rwanda, I visited Burundi, I visited Democratic Republic of Congo, and I watched the bubbling up of anti-Semitism over the last, I would say, 4 or 5 years in our party with increasing concern. And I am deeply concerned that Momentum have been targeting MPs like myself who went and stood alongside our Jewish colleagues and protested against our leadership's failure. This is about the fundamental right of Jewish people to participate fully in the political life of this country and our party. And if we do not protect it, we are not worthy of the name socialist. This is one of the oldest hatreds in the world, and we have seen in the last century where it ends up, and it only ends up in one place. It ends in violence. And I am afraid that if it is tolerated, it is nodded at, it is winked at, that, you know, we are complicit in it. Why is Ken Livingstone still a member of our party? Why has the Chakrabarti report not been implemented? This stuff, we've known about this stuff. We've had a report, nothing has happened. And I share colleagues' frustrations in the room and people's fears on the doorstep that we are not serious about tackling this. So one anti-Semite in the Labour Party is one too many. Diane said that responding to the debate. I passionately agree with her. We need to get on with it. The time for talk is over. And one final thing, what should Jeremy do? Jeremy should go to Israel and he should rebuild the links with our sister party there.
That's a great suggestion. Angela, I think you wanted to come in briefly on this.
Yeah, I wanted to make a slightly wider point about the politics of hate and blame, of which this is the most egregious example. We are in a very volatile political place where unmediated social media stuff is coarsening debate. We are mainly, if you go onto social media, it's mainly motivated by the politics of blame, victim blaming, hate, increasingly violent language. We're seeing it with the trans debate. We're seeing it with debate. I mean, I was subject to homophobic comments that are very similar and then blamed for complaining about it. It's the same modus operandi. Diane's been the victim of it. It's chasing decent people out of politics, and a lot of it is bot-generated, generated in places, who knows, hybrid warfare, the new nasty potential of unmediated social media, which denies facts, denies the truth. Some people believe the world is governed by lizards. We have left sort of the Enlightenment behind, which is why in my book I talk about actually completing the Enlightenment and aiming for fact-based, truth-based politics, which is about the politics of love and hope, not hate, division and blame. Because the only people that benefit from a politics of hate, division and blame are not people who are interested in democracy. They are not people who are interested in the greater progress of the human race. They are demagogues, they are populists, they are right-wing. We need to expunge them from our political life.
Fantastic. Thank you, Angela. Liz, you wanted to come in.
I just wanted to thank Adam for everything that you've done, and I can see you're deeply upset by what's happened, and we will put it right. And to do that, actions are going to speak louder than words. I think the party should accept as a whole the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism immediately. The party has admitted it's taken far too long to deal with these cases, and I agree, anti-Semites should be expelled. Actions have consequences, and if you've, had vile anti-Semitic views, you don't belong in the Labour Party. I think we should accept all CLPs, the Jewish Labour movement's offer of providing proper training. Yeah. Because unless people see actions, they won't trust us, and they won't believe what we say, which is that we're going to kick it out and beat it. And Adam, I hope that this doesn't put you off standing to be a councillor again, and we will all come and help.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I hope you'll come back to another Progress conference, Adam. That might be even a bit better. So, listen, I think, just picking up what Angela said, one of the things I think is so important, I think she absolutely hit the nail on the head about social media being this kind of unregulated vortex of just hate at the moment. And we all see it, and we all experience it, and we all have kind of views on it. But I think we've all got our own biases as well, every single person in this room. And I just say, each one of us, just check yourself before sometimes you hit that tweet button, the send button, because there is so much poison and hate and division going around. Even though sometimes you think you're on the side of the right, and you think you're a good person and that your gang is the right gang, sometimes the stuff coming from all sides is absolutely vile. I mean, I've had to actually pick up people who I feel I'm on the same wing of the party, but they have sent stuff about Diane, which I think actually borders on being completely offensive, and I have called them out on it. And I just think... we shouldn't kid ourselves individually that we, in our righteousness as an individual, have the monopoly on what is good and bad at the moment. There is a lot of hate going out there. In fact, you go on social media, there's this fevered atmosphere. It's like a kind of an orgy of hate. Everyone just feels like they have to sort of get involved and I think we're meant to be better than the people that we seek to beat in politics. And we've got to kind of adopt that ourselves as individuals as well. Okay, that's the Jerry Springer bit over. To hear. Right, can we take some more questions? I don't want to necessarily move away from the anti-Semitism stuff, but if anyone has got some, because we might come back to it at the end, but if are there some other kind of questions as well? Okay, gentleman over there who's been waving his hand at me, white T-shirt over there. We'll come to you, and then we will go to, okay, gentleman at the back who is sort of waving his hand, and then lady actually over there with the blonde hair hand up. We'll do 3 over there, and then I'll move into the centre of the room.
Dan Mayhew, Scientist for Labour, Campaigns Officer. One of the campaigns I really want to get on top of is getting more women into science and technology. But it's bloody hard in Labour at the moment when we have all of this sexual harassment cases that's not been dealt with. There are cases that have been going on for 3 or 4 years that has not been dealt with. It's just fundamentally wrong. Are we going to actually take action now and not make accusers have to stand in front of the accuser and ask the person that's victimised them? That's just plain wrong. How am I meant to stand up and campaign to increase more women in my area when we have that in our party? What are we going to do about it?
Okay, thanks very much, Dan. Then I'm going to go to the lady just there. We'll do the questions in batches of 3, because I know we're going to get through as many as we can.
Hi, hello. My name's Samantha, and I come from Erewash CLP, which is in Derbyshire. I joined the Labour Party about 2 years ago, inspired by Jeremy Corbyn and his integrity, and was relatively new to politics. Got involved locally last summer and have been really active with a fantastic group of people who go out canvassing a lot. And I've slowly had the hope beaten out of me, quite frankly. And so my question is, when we have seen and been out and canvassed for our colleagues over in Amber Valley and Derby City, and seen us decimated, quite frankly, and Chris Williamson lose about 13 seats, I might be wrong on the number, but Derby City lose control to no overall control, I am feeling a little bit sick to the stomach, having been selected recently to stand as councillor in Erewash's elections next May, and I'm starting to think, I don't know why I should bother. So it would be really great to hear what the panel have to say to give us a little bit of inspiration and hope that actually in just 12 months' time we might put right the shower of shit that happened.
Just get it all out, Samantha. Just get it all out. Okay, thank you. Okay, gentleman with his hand up, can get a microphone to him. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Luke, I'm a student at Birmingham University. I'd like to ask the panel if they feel Labour is on track to win the next general election, whenever it is called.
Okay, great question. Right. So, Dan, I'm going to start with you on this. What should the party be doing to speed up the sexual harassment cases? And just give us a bit of information about this case. With that at one point, the woman was told she might have to face her person sort of in the sort of justice process.
Well, I mean, it's the same thing I was talking about earlier in reference to anti-Semitism. We're just getting a lot more people, a lot more lawyers in to deal with it. I don't think the woman you're referencing had to stand in front of her.
No, but I think he was going to be allowed to question her.
She wasn't going to be in the same room. She wasn't going to have to stand in front of him. I think that he did have questions which a third party put to her. But it's not the best system.
No, can you put into the microphone?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. She didn't have to stand in front of him. He wasn't allowed to question her directly. They weren't in the same room. But I think he was able to draft questions which were then passed to a third party for her to ask. But it doesn't sound like the best sort of due process. And I think we have to look at that again.
And also, I mean, you would argue you're somebody who's fought a long time for women's rights alongside people like Harriet Harman. In terms of when we talk about, how the criminal justice system deals with women who are victims, we would not be supportive of that if, let's say, the government, we want to protect victims through the process, don't we?
No, I said it's not due process. It's not due process you'd want in a court of law.
Is that something you could take back to Jenny Formby from this today?
Yeah, I can definitely take it back to Jenny Formby. And I think she would probably see it differently anyway, because this process started under Ian McNichol, to be quite honest. No, but it did. That's when it happened. But I think Jenny's very committed on the...
And can I just, on the Ian McNichol thing, do you share Don Butler's comments that somehow this anti-Semitism thing was sort of Ian McNichol's doing? I mean, that was surely a very ill-judged comment.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. That wouldn't be a sensible thing to say. Just in relation to the poor lady that says that Hope has been beaten out of her in Erewash. Was it Erewash? Let me just say generally, I've been in the party, I've been an MP for 30 years, and I've been in the party for 40 years. And there have been points in my life in the party when Hope has been nearly beaten out of me. And the reason I'm sitting here and talking to you and trying to have a conversation is because I knew what I believed in. I knew that it was worth fighting for. I was confident that the causes I believed in, and some of the causes that were marginalised when I first joined the party were LGBT rights, women's rights, anti-racism. I knew that the causes I believed in were the right causes, and so that helped me to carry on. Now, I don't know the particular circumstances in Derbyshire. I do know Chris Williams, but there you go. But I would just say generally to you that in my lifetime, it's been important to keep believing it's worth struggling to make a change. And what was the last question?
Can we win what do we have to do to win a general? Do you think we can win a general election? What do we have to do to win a general election?
Yes, I can actually. I remember in the run-up to the 2017 general election, a lot of people in Parliament and all commentators said we were going to be annihilated. We were going to be annihilated. I sat in the tea room on the last day before the general election. People were almost in tears. They thought they weren't coming back. They thought they were going to get smashed. Actually, we had a much better result than people expected. Basically, because we had a manifesto which spoke to people's concerns. I have fought 8 general elections. That was the only one where people actually came up to me on the street and said, I really like your manifesto. Call me foolish, call me, Pollyanna, but I do believe that we can win the next general election. I'm not going to say it's going to be easy, but actually we owe it to the people that we're all here, I hope, trying to represent. We owe it to win the next general election, and I believe we will. And I'll see you here, whatever it is, 3 or 4 years' time, and I'll say, I told you so.
Oh, well. OK, Liz.
Right. Starting off on the sexual harassment stuff. Sexual harassment and abuse has happened in this party under all different leaders, all different general secretaries, right? So let's just clear that up to start with. And it has taken far, far too long to get to grips with this issue. And what we I want to pay tribute here, can I, to Bex Bailey, to people... One of the bravest young women I have ever met in my life, who has spoken about being raped by somebody in the Labour Party, about taking that case in and being told it would be better for her not to bring it up, and it would be better because that would be better for her future political career. That is absolutely disgusting. When the report into Bex's case is delivered, it must be published. I want to thank all the women involved in Labour too, to Stella, to Jess Phillips, who have been relentless in campaigning on this issue. And we need a proper independent process, because what happens is people don't want to tell someone because they love this party. They don't want to bring it into disrepute. They're worried that the person they are going to report it to might be a political ally or a political enemy of the person. And that's why it's got to be an independent process. And I hope that victims won't be made to stand in the same room as the person who's perpetrated the crime. That promise must be fulfilled. But in those cases, the victim doesn't get to answer questions of the person. So we have to sort it out and do it immediately.
Okay.
And, sorry, on the wider questions from, I want to link both what Samantha and Luke said. I am very pleased to hear someone from the East Midlands talk about these issues because, you know, we have to win back seats in the East Midlands if we're going to get back into government. And I think we should be optimistic because I have never known a more divided, incompetent, visionless government than this bunch of Tories. They, you know, on Brexit, it would be a joke if it wasn't so serious that the Cabinet is still arguing about 2 customs options, neither of which work, both of which will be rejected by the EU, with 6 months to go before a withdrawal agreement. And if we don't get that, we won't get a transition. There'll be a cliff edge with all the destruction on our economy. A government that thinks that the answer to getting the skills we need to compete in the 21st century is slashing Sure Start and grammar schools. And on Windrush, which Diane, alongside David Lammy and Yvette, have done a brilliant job in exposing the problems there, they still won't admit that it is their ridiculous immigration target to reduce migration, net migration to the tens of thousands that has caused this to happen in the first place. So I am optimistic. But in order to win, we have got to break open deadlock Britain. Because the truth is we are very strong in younger, diverse, socially liberal, big metropolitan cities. And the Tories are very strong with older voters in less diverse areas, including in our post-industrial heartlands and coastal and rural areas. And the party that can break out of that, reach beyond its comfort zone and build a new coalition is the party that's going to win, and I believe we can do it.
I'm just conscious of time, so I'm going to go to the floor to take some more questions, but I'm going to bring in the others that haven't spoken for the next round. Okay, I'm going to be in the middle here. Lady at the back with the dark hair, gentleman at the front with the dark hair, and then gentleman in the pink shirt over there. So we'll do it in rounds of 3s again. If you could stand up and sit. Yeah, if you go. No, it was lady at the back with the green, with the blue shirt. Sorry, I will come back to you. Yeah.
My question is about the behaviour of some Labour MPs, and it's been quite difficult as a young BAME woman in the Labour Party at the moment. We were talking about social media. Just last week, I tweeted a question to my MP, which is Clive Lewis, and I asked him why he was basically supporting an anti-Semite, Mark Wandsworth, and he, on purpose, quote-tweeted me, sent quite a sexist reply back, and after that, I received the most incredible amount of abuse. Yep. I don't think it's acceptable for a Labour MP to be treating his constituents like that, but also, I just find it really frustrating that they keep talking about sexism and racism and all of those awful things, but then it's acceptable to kind of abuse me on Twitter. It just unleashed a lot of stuff. What are your opinions?
Thank you very much for that question. Then it was the gentleman at the front here. No, it was the guy down here with the... I will come back to you, lady in the green shirt, yeah.
Hi, my name's Josh. I'm External Campaigns Rep at Queen Mary Labour. So over the last few weeks, I've been quite discouraged by our response to foreign policy, especially the Salisbury attack and Assad using chemical weapons in Syria. So I'd like to ask the panel, what do you see for the future of Labour's foreign policy? And how can we stand firm in our commitment to humanitarianism? And also, one of my few experiences I've had on Thursday actually, I was helping run a campaign centre in Tower Hamlets where we made gains, which is great. But I found out when I was running the campaign centre that next door Christine Shawcroft was running a campaign centre for Labour. This is a lady who defended a Holocaust denier, running a campaign centre for the Labour Party. I think we should let that sink in quickly. Why is she still in the Labour Party? Why is Ken Livingstone in the Labour Party?
Yeah, okay,
Talked about
great.
it, but I'm just pointing it out.
Great, okay. Great, and gentleman over there, Nathan in the pink shirt.
Hi, my name's Nathan. I'm from Vauxhall. I'm sorry, I'm going back to the earlier round of questioning. You say we need to do something, but I want to ask a question: how? Because all this stuff we talk about in the media essentially is tolerated and encouraged by people very close to the leader. They allow Squawk Box, they allow evolved politics, they allow the Canaries to spout some awful shite, quite frankly, and certain people don't mention that, don't say Dickie Bird because their online hordes are fighting the fight for them. And the second bit also, so how in that sense are we going to clean up our media image, but also how are we going to clean up our image in actually tackling problems with how the leadership views the party and the rest of the world, when essentially it's existed in a bubble for 40 years, which has tolerated political ideologies that we would all repudiate because they've been part and parcel and comrades over the years. How exactly are we going to tackle that when it's a pretty existential question for why we're here?
Right, okay. So we've got, I mean, two of those kind of questions sort of loop up in terms of the leadership and, these, social media and reputation and all of that, and then a very important question about foreign policy. Georgia, if I could start with you, please.
Well, Canada doesn't have much of a foreign policy, although Boris Johnson did suggest that we needed a border between Westminster, or it was comparable to the Irish border. So, there's that element. But I think that going back to the point about anti-Semitism and how we challenge this, and I think it's about all of us speaking up whenever we see it. And I found it really, really personally difficult and heartbreaking to see members of the Jewish community not feel safe in the Labour Party, to see my own grandmother say to me, "What are you doing? What are you doing in this party? It's not for Jewish people." And that is something that is not the majority of members. It's a small minority who are anti-Semitic, but I've seen it, and I've seen Holocaust denial, I've seen all of this, and we know that it exists. And we're at a place now, because we've all acknowledged that we were too slow to tackle it, where we've lost the trust of people, and people do not trust the Labour Party with these issues. So we need to be unequivocal. We need to be strong, we need to reach out, and we need to go out to those communities, to listen to what they're saying, as we would any other group, and treat them in the same way, listen to their experience, and then take action, and have zero tolerance when we see it. And if we see something on Twitter that we think is wrong, we have to speak out, in spite of the environment, in spite of the fact we might get abuse, in spite of the fact that it's difficult.
Okay, Angela.
Well, first things first, I just think that Twitter is a sewer. And so I wouldn't communicate with anyone like that using that particular sort of process, because everybody sees it, it's published. People respond quickly. Maybe they don't think that loads of abuse will follow, but we do know that as someone who, got 47,000 individual pieces of abuse when we changed my Facebook photograph, 47,000 individual bits of abuse about how awful I looked. This is not a positive place for us to be communicating with each other. And so I think that, if you want to talk to Clive Lewis and you're in his constituency, you should try to take him aside and talk to him personally, where there won't be these kinds of things. And I just think that Twitter and that kind of social media, we're on it because we have to be, but I wouldn't use it to express opinions like that. And that there are armies of abusers out there who pile in, and it's done deliberately to stop people having an opinion, to change their behaviour, to drive them out of politics. And so if something's that negative, I just think you should stay away from it, and not communicate in that manner. I'm sorry to say it, but I think that's where we are with social media at the moment.
And foreign policy?
Foreign policy, well, I think that what's happened with Brexit has diminished us as a country massively. we've given the impression, well, Theresa May on our behalf, has given the impression that we've turned our back on cooperation in the world and that we're isolationists living a kind of imperial, nostalgic sort of foreign policy that somehow we can return to empire. And actually what we've done is far more seriously bad for us and our influence in the world than the Suez crisis. I was wondering whether David Cameron will be seen as the worst Prime Minister than Eden or Lord North, and I decided it was Lord North because he lost the American colonies, and we've never really recovered from that. So I actually think, you know, think of all that tax revenue we gave up. I actually think that what we...
If that goes on Twitter, this is all going badly.
That was a joke. That was a joke. Anyway, I actually think that the future in foreign policy is about international cooperation. It's about allying with people who have the same values as us. It's about pursuing and confronting those that are demagogues, that don't care for democratic values. It's about the internationalist part of our democratic socialist values. And all of the problems that will be facing us in the next period in the 21st century can only be solved through cooperation. And actually by joining together across borders, be it tax havens, be it taxing wealth, be it driving out these tax havens that are committing grand larceny with all of our tax revenues at the moment and helping those who are already rich to keep everything and basically be parasitical on the rest of us. All of these issues, climate change, international cooperation, is the absolute key to solving it. Isolationism, fantasy, imperial dreams that have long gone, a revival of the Commonwealth, it's all last century. We've got to look forwards and realise that it's only by cooperating on an international basis with things like NATO for our own defence, with things like the UN, with international cooperation, that we will make progress and try and stabilise our world and make it fit for human beings to live in and safe. And so that's what we ought to be doing.
Angela, can I just ask you, did you support Theresa May's decision to join Donald Trump with the Syria bombings?
Oh, has she made a decision?
Well, no, the one back a couple of, what did you think of that?
Well, I think it's very difficult at the moment. We've had issues where we have gone in and dealt with things in Libya, in Iraq, and that hasn't worked. We haven't got involved in Syria, and that's been a disaster. The only way that you can try and stabilise these situations is by having a UN, an international community that works properly and that can be effective. And we've got to rebuild those institutions.
But do you think she was right to support Trump with the military action?
Well, it's not been very effective, has it?
And do you just on the Syria thing, do you regret the vote under Ed Miliband?
No, because I think that David Cameron recalled Parliament using Twitter. He didn't build a proper coalition to talk about what the game plan was in Libya. There was an immediate humanitarian issue which was properly solved by the intervention, but then that went wrong. And that lack of follow-up in Libya fatally affected everybody's attitude to what was going to be happening in Syria. There wasn't a proper plan in place, and he didn't reach out across the political divide to give reassurance.
Okay, thanks very much. Mary?
Well, I disagree with Angela. I did support what the Prime Minister did, and had Parliament been sitting, I'd have voted for it. And I think we need to look with very open eyes at the world that we are living in. We have state and non-state state actors on military adventures, using traditional but also hybrid warfare. And when we talk about hybrid warfare, we're talking about Twitter and Facebook, and the emergence of how Cambridge Analytica and all these data miners are able to get inside our heads, attack us with ads that fuel our worldview, whether that's JC for PM, whether that's not JC for PM, whether that's the far right, and people are in their own little bubbles, and this is potentially problematic. And we have psychological grade warfare weapons being used now through social media. So I agree with Angela on the point about being very careful about what you say and who you engage with in Twitter, because I think probably half of our followers are bots generated by people sitting in labs in St. Petersburg being paid to do that. We have had an act of state-sponsored terrorism in our own country, the first use of chemical weapons in this country since we signed the Chemical Weapons, the Geneva Convention and the Chemicals Weapons Convention in 1922. If we allow that to just be nodded by, to just not make a big deal of it, we are allowing the red lines, which were overstepped in Syria in 2013 when we didn't go in, and Obama said he would, and we failed to back Cameron. We are allowing those red lines to be overstepped in our own country. And the only message that sends to Putin is that we are weak, that NATO is fragmenting, that the US is weak. And when Trump did his little solo airstrikes last year, in the advent of the previous chemical weapons attack, it did go some way to restoring those red lines. They got cleverer about how they delivered chemical weapons in Syria. They didn't use fast jets, they used helicopters to deliver them. And there's evidence of Russian collusion in the cleanup of this. So what does Russia want? They want us weak. They want us out of NATO, and they don't want Trident. And they're testing us on every single thing. And we absolutely have to stand firm. And we won Plymouth 2 days ago because of our campaign against Tory defence cuts. That's where the Labour Party needs to be.
I agree with that. I just wanted to ask one question, because I think the international politics is incredibly interesting. Do you think, I know we all big boo hiss Donald Trump, but do you think we should give him some credit for his stance in Syria?
Oh, God. I think he has shown leadership where NATO, France, Germany and the UK have failed to show leadership. And I will not applaud him for anything, and I am concerned that he is a creature of the Russian state and that he is in his position because those bots persuaded 40,000 voters in those 3 swing states to vote for him. But he has drawn a red line there, and I think that we were right to go in with him. We were right to redraw that red line, and if we don't respond to chemical weapons attacks in our own country, we will never get permission to govern this country.
Okay. Diane.
Mary talks, she says, oh, he was right to offer leadership on Syria. Mary talks as if Donald Trump has a thought-through, coherent position on anything. His own generals are terrified of him. The idea that he can wake up in the morning, reach for his phone, do a tweet, and bomb Syria, that to me is not, well, that's what happened. I'm not...
Hang on, please, can we not... No, sorry, sir, we're not doing this, okay? We're not having people shouting at and heckling. We're not that kind of thing. If this is not your thing, then you can go, I'm sorry, all right?
So, I personally don't think we should have just tucked in behind Donald Trump. You know what I think even more? We should have had a vote in Parliament. And you know why? If you don't have a vote in Parliament, the government is doing it on the royal prerogative. I think in 2018, using the royal prerogative to decide whether to go to war or not is not right. We remember whether it was the Iraq War, whether it's Afghanistan, I think the principle that Parliament gets to vote on war, just as Congress gets to vote on war, is a very important thing.
Okay. Well, no, because I'm just very, very conscious of time. We've got a lot of people to get in. The one thing I just want to say to that lady who talked about the pylon, Diane, would you take that back to Jenny Formby and to the leadership as well? Because I think there is a concern that we do need to all look after each other a bit more on Twitter, and Labour activists, Labour MPs should not be involved in kind of pylons, particularly on sort of one young woman from the Labour Party. Yeah. Okay. Right.
No, I agree with that.
Okay. Good. Right. So more. Okay. Lady at the back there. Then lady in the green shirt that I didn't get to quickly, and gentleman with the red book there. Okay. Great. And if we could be snappy with the questions, because we want to try and squeeze as many in before we go.
Okay, I'll be very snappy. So I was a local government councillor in Southwark until Thursday, and I'm quite concerned because local government is where Labour is in power, and I know there are quite a lot of people in local government who are a bit concerned about the intervention of the NEC over Haringey, and especially in areas of housing policy where there is so much controversy. I represent an area where we're having a big housing development, but it's actually broadly supported for people on the left and in the centre of the party. Does everyone on the panel support the right of Labour councils setting their own policies, being voted in, and then delivering those policies?
Okay, great question, thank you. Lady in the green.
Do the panel agree that regardless of having a medical certificate or whatever, someone who self-identifies as a woman should be recognised as a woman and should be allowed to run for women's roles, including being included on all women shortlists?
Okay, thank you very much. And gentleman just there, yeah.
Hello, my name's Patrick Hall from Bedford. The party and the party leadership has talked a lot about the need to deliver a jobs Brexit. Does the panel agree that the best way to do that is by remaining in the single market? And related to that, does the panel believe that the Labour Party conference should this year be permitted a meaningful vote on that matter?
Okay, very good. Georgia, can I start with you on the issue of councillors?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. We won in Camden with an increased majority on a really clear manifesto that was written by our local Labour members, which responded to the concerns of our community. And this morning, after a really great result, I was brought back down to earth, meeting at my surgery a woman, a pensioner who was homeless, and the housing need in our community is so great. And we, as Labour councils, are in such a difficult position. You know, we've in Camden lost half our budget. We are struggling in the midst of all of this austerity and a hostile government, and so we need to be responsive to our community, to stand on the manifestos that we were elected on, and I absolutely agree with that.
And what did you feel about the Claire Corbett situation in Haringey? What were your views on that?
In the sense of, in terms of housing regeneration, I mean, in Camden, we are taking a different approach. We're taking a council-led development approach. But I think the point is that Claire and Haringey were responsible and accountable to their residents and to their local party. And so I think that there shouldn't have been an intervention.
Right, okay. Okay. And do you want to answer anything on all women shortlists?
Yeah, let me just say, I think as someone who sat on the NEC for 11 years, I think it was most unwise of the NEC to get involved in the Haringey situation like they did. And I hope that they'll show a little bit more restraint in the future, or they're going to get themselves in many a pickle. On self-identification, I am in favour of trans rights. It's always been the case that trans women have been allowed to stand on women-only shortlists. That has not changed in our party. It's not suddenly been decided that they can. And this has all come from the government, when Justine Greening was responsible, saying that they were going to change the form of self-identification, which is currently used in the gender recognition legislation, which the Labour Party passed in the early part of the noughties, the noughties, whatever you want to call them. And that is a very medicalised model of saying that you are a transgendered person, that changing your gender, which means that you have to basically live in your preferred gender for 2 years. You have to basically admit that you have a mental illness, which is gender dysphoria. You then have to have your case put before a panel of psychologists and doctors who say that you do have a mental illness and that they agree that it's in your interest to change your gender. You can change all your other ID documents, but your to get a gender recognition certificate, so your documents all agree with your birth certificate, you have to go through this humiliating process. And so what the government decided they were going to do was actually to consult on changing that so you could self-declare. Now, this is done in Ireland, it's done in Chile, it's done in various other places where you actually go before a magistrate. Instead of going through that humiliating process, you go before a magistrate and you declare that you have changed your gender, and that is recognised in law. That is all we're talking about. And I have to say that I understand that some women are worried by this and they need to be reassured. But as a woman, I'm not challenged at all by the idea that there are some transgender people born into the wrong bodies who wish to transition to another gender. That doesn't affect me or my feminism. And we should be much more understanding about it. I have to say I have been shocked by the extremity of the so-called debate and activism that is going on the extremes on the transgender issue, where there've been bad behaviour on both sides of the argument. And I think that we have to bring people together to reassure women that some big bloke isn't going to be allowed to come in and pretend that he's a woman to go into a domestic violence shelter. That's just not going to happen. It's a huge issue, this, and I've been asked a question about it. All I can say is that we need to remember that transgendered people actually suffer huge levels of abuse. Over 50% of them have attempted suicide, and we need to approach this with compassion, and we need to bring both sides of the debate together and not go off to the extremes.
Okay, thank you. Liz, do you want to?
I think that was very well argued position, Angela, and I agree with that. But just wanted to say something following. Great that Dan Jarvis was elected yesterday. Very, very pleased about that. But we have got further to go, and next time there's a directly elected mayor, it would be nice if there was a little bit more diversity in the Labour Party. We've got a woman or a black and minority ethnic person being another one of the directly elected mayors. Can I come to the point about, I strongly agree with what Georgia has said about Labour councils. You know, the difficult decisions. I mean, you all know, as many councillors here, how tough it is, the decisions you're having to take. And it is for you, accountable to your members and your local residents who need to make those decisions. We have to stick firm with that and not interfere. I think all of us would worry that decisions on high without the evidence could be given about all the different difficult decisions we have to make in our councils, and that's very important. I wanted to answer the gentleman who asked the question about Brexit. You know, I am a strong supporter of the fantastic campaign that Ali McGovern and Heidi Alexander have been running for, Labour for the Customs Union and Single Market. They have made a huge difference, and The Prime Minister does not have a majority in Parliament to get her hard Brexit through. And there is a real opportunity for us in the Labour Party to make a huge difference to the future of the country here. And I certainly would like to see a proper, not just vote, but debate at conference this year about this issue. But we are coming right up to the wire here. I mean, the vote that we get in Parliament in October, it has to be a meaningful vote, not just to take it or leave it, because if it's either the government's deal or nothing and we crash out, that's terrible for the economy and for this country. The House of Lords is doing a fantastic job to put those options on the table, and I believe that if we work across the House and we get ourselves into the right position on this, we will make a big difference to the future of the country.
Diane, can I come on the Brexit question first? Do you think that that's on the cards? Could we give conference a vote on Brexit next conference?
Well, it would depend what resolutions were put to conference. But I just wanted.
But would you like, if you could sort of have a would you like to? Do you think that's an important thing that should be debated and voted upon?
We want the maximum participation, and if members put resolutions down, they'll be debated. Let me just quickly say about trans women. Trans women are women, and of course they should be on all women's shortlists. That's quite straightforward. On the lady that raised Clive Lewis, if you catch me as I'm going out, and so I can take your name, then I'll speak to Clive Lewis on your behalf. On Haringey, I have to take a slightly different view from my fellow panellists. The point about the Haringey housing regeneration, it wasn't that people felt in principle that you shouldn't have private sector involvement, because everyone has to do that now because of the problems with finance. They felt that the Haringey model gave too much to the private sector. And both MPs, Catherine West, David Lammy, were against that regeneration scheme. Neither of them are Momentum or anything like that. Both CLPs were against that housing regeneration scheme. And the NEC wasn't directing Claire to drop the scheme. What they actually suggested that Andrew Gwynn, because they had been written to by a group of councillors on Haringey who were concerned that Claire was going to drive the scheme through. And what the NEC voted to do was to send Andrew Gwynn to negotiate between the group of councillors that didn't want it and Claire. So I just wanted to say that. It was a very problematic scheme, not because the private sector was involved, but because it was a very bad deal. And amongst the people in Haringey who were opposed to it were people who weren't particularly left-wing at all. They just thought it was a bad scheme. And then just finally, I know time is a thing, yeah. Windrush. There's few things I felt more passionately against the way the Windrush generation was treated since I've been an MP. But I would say this. We're going to continue to fight for the Windrush generation to get the figures on the numbers who've been deported, to make sure they get decent compensation and so on. But I think Windrush has shed a light on our attitudes to migrants. And I think I agreed. I wasn't here for Ali McGovern's speech, but I read it online. And I agreed with a lot of what she said around that issue. And as Shadow Home Secretary, I may do things that you all disagree with wildly, but what I will be pushing for is a new narrative around migration. The thing about Windrush was it humanised migrants in a way I don't think they've been humanised before. So I think this is a time and a point where we as a Labour movement can have a new discussion around immigration, which is not just running scared of the Mail and Express, but a discussion which looks to our economic interests, which looks to our social interests, but also looks to our commitment to human rights. So I just wanted to say that.
And I think that's hugely welcome, and also, you to pay tribute to you on the work that you have done on this issue in the Windrush stuff. You have been brilliant on all of this stuff. You and David Lammy as well. And of course with Yvette Cooper. But just on the immigration stuff, where do you think Labour is going to get, where can Labour be on freedom of movement in terms of the difficulty we've got in terms of relieving the single market. Where does freedom of movement come into all of that for the Labour Party and policy?
Well, we are where we are. Keir Starmer is our Brexit person, so probably this question is best addressed to him.
But will you be fighting for?
All I can say, and Jeremy knows this, I will never tolerate a narrative on freedom of movement which is actually masking a crude anti-immigration narrative, because I think that would be wrong. That's all I can say to you at this point.
But you presumably have been someone, you fought for freedom of movement. You know, you didn't want us to be leaving the EU. How strongly will you make your case to the powers that be on this?
I always make my case strongly. I really do.
Mary.
Well, let's not forget it's the Tory government that has refused to preserve our rights to travel freely in the EU if Brexit happens. I don't subscribe to the mindset that says when Brexit happens. That's a Tory mindset. Brexit is a Tory project, it's a deregulator's project, it's a project designed to strip us of our hard-won environmental, social and employment rights. Never let us forget that, and we should fight it every step of the way. We didn't have a conference last year because we were all busy in a general election. I am living proof that you can vote against triggering Article 50 in a seat that voted 63% to leave and still survive. As we go from being the fastest growing country, the economy in the G20, to the slowest growing economy in the G20, there is no such thing as a jobs first Brexit. There is only going to be a job loss Brexit, as you well know, Patrick, and Patrick and I used to share an office back in the good old days. So we have to keep saying to people, it's taking longer, it's more costly, it's more complicated than the Tories told us. You don't trust Theresa May to deliver your public services. Why would you trust her with the largest political, constitutional and administrative task since World War II? And we have to, when those votes are coming in October, be ready to fight for the future of this country as we have never fought before. And I hope that our party will be united. And I know that Diane is fighting the good fight for us in the Shadow Cabinet on that.
Right. Now, is there an official looking person? How much time have we got left? None. Are we out of time? Is someone... Yes, we are. Oh, someone's making... Okay, well, listen, thank you all so much. And we have a huge round of applause for our fantastic panel. And I just want to say one thing before we all go. I just want to say one thing. It's very, and we've all discussed this climate is horrific at the moment in politics, and it is very, very easy just to take great big lumps out of each other, you know, even within our own party. And the one thing, I'm not saying that we should all hug and sing Kumbaya at the end of the day, but just taking lumps out of each other is the only people that are going to benefit from that are the Conservative Party, right? And whatever views we have, we do want to rid our country of this Conservative government. And just remember, for all the thing that we talk about the momentum effect in the Labour Party, whether you agree with it or not, make no mistake, the UKIP vote going to prop up the Conservative Party is going to drag them across to the hard right, particularly when it comes to Brexit. So we have got to pull together. And on that happy note, let's all go to the pub!